welcome to Water of Life Online. We are so glad that you are tuning in for today's message. And you know, here at Water of Life, we believe in having passion for God and compassion for people. And so we're so glad that you are with us today. For more information about our church, from our service times to the ministries we have available and more, you can check out our website at wateroflifecc.org. And of course, if you want to stay connected with us throughout the week, make sure you follow us on our different social media platforms. Well, we're so glad that you're here. We hope that God speaks to you, that He encourages you, and we hope that you are blessed by today's message.
Build up the people around you. Build up the people in your community. Build up the people in your church. Well, that was fantastic. If you're joining us from Townsville, you missed out on some fantastic worship this morning. And I'm only back up here because you're in for a treat this morning. And I'm going to introduce our speaker. He is someone I admire, respect, and appreciate deeply, and he joined our staff about a year ago. And if you've been around some on Saturday nights, you may have heard him preach, but I wanted just to introduce you to one of our teaching pastors. You may not know him, and his name is Joel Sanchez, and Pastor Joel has been teaching for a long time, and we are just honored to have him on our team. He's been with us for about a year now, and you're in for a treat this weekend. Water of Life, would you welcome Pastor Joel Sanchez?
Hello, Water of Life. How's everybody doing today? We are glad that you are here. We're going to get into the Word. If you have been with us over the last couple of weeks, we have been in a series on the kingdom of God. We're going to take a slight break from that series. We'll come back to it next weekend. But today, I want us to spend some time in a passage that, if you've been around church for a little bit, maybe you've heard it before, you're familiar with it, maybe you haven't heard it at all. But my hope is that as we spend some time in the Word, that God, through His Spirit, would encourage you, that He would perhaps speak to you in a way that you desperately need to hear Him. So if you have a Bible, an iPhone, an iPad, however you access Scripture, I'm going to ask you to turn to the book of Hebrews, chapter 12. It's where we're going to be for the most of our time today. Let's pray. God, we thank you for the Word. God, thank you for the opportunity to come and just be here and take a moment of our day, a moment of our week, and just bow down before you and recognize you as the God who is able to do more than we can possibly ask, think, or imagine. God, help us not to limit you by what we see, by our fear, by our doubt, by our previous experience, or by our disappointment. Remind us that you really are bigger, that you really are greater than any of us have ever seen. God, speak to us through your word. Quicken, awaken our spirits and our hearts to you today, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. So if you turn to the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, all throughout the New Testament, in 1 Timothy, in Galatians, the authors talk about the Christian walk, talk about the journey with God. Sometimes they use the analogy of a race in order to kind of explain and try to put some parameters and maybe create some parallelisms between running an actual race and walking with God and running with God, your journey with God. And so Hebrews chapter 12 picks up on that analogy. It picks up on that parallel. Let me give you a little bit of a background of what is happening in the book of Hebrews. The book of Hebrews is written to encourage believers to not abandon the faith and to encourage believers that were going through persecution and hardship and trial to be steadfast, to be unmovable. What the author is trying to do, the author is saying, hey, in the Old Testament, you had a priest and you had this sacrificial system, and now Jesus has come and he is a better priest. He is our high priest. He is the ultimate high priest. He is better than anything that has ever been. He is the best there ever is. For as a result of that, don't abandon your faith, even though you are going through trial, even though you are going through hardship, hang tight. And so if you just flip one page and you look to Hebrews chapter 11, what you find is a chapter that perhaps a lot of us are familiar with, called the Hall of Faith sometimes. And it has the names and the brief stories of Old Testament people who went through difficulty and trial and hardship and still follow God and pressed on and moved forward and kept on running the race. So chapter 11 talks to you about these people, and then chapter 12 starts off, and I want you to read it along with me. If you have a Bible, if you don't, the verses are going to be up on the screen. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, it says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, we must get rid of every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and run with endurance the race set out for us, keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set out for him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. Think of him who endured such opposition against himself by sinners, so that you may not grow weary in your souls and give up." Therefore, I want to share 5 things with you today that hopefully will help you, will encourage you as you run the race, as you journey with God, as you follow Jesus. 5 things that perhaps will help you. I told you that the first thing, what the author does in chapter 11, is he tells you about all of these people that have gone ahead of you, that have ran the race in front of you. And he says, therefore, being surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, here's the first thing that you need. If you're going to run the race, if you're going to follow Jesus, you need to get inspired to run. You need to get inspired to run. The reason why he says, therefore, in chapter 12, what he's saying is, if you look at all the people that came before you, you see that they ran the race and they made it. Look at their life, get into the Word, look at the challenges that they had to overcome, look at the trials that they had to overcome. You need to get some inspiration, you need to get some passion if you're going to run anywhere. You need to surround yourself with people who are running the race. As a matter of fact, you need to surround yourself with people who run faster than you, who run harder after God than you. You need to surround yourself with people who have been down the road that you are trying to go. In other words, you cannot be the holiest Christian that you know. You can't. If you're like, Pastor, in my circle, I am the holiest, I know the most Bible, I pray the most, I fast the most, you have to find some other people that run faster than you, because they will inspire you to run. If you've ever, some people, they go to the gym and they work out, and sometimes when you're working out with somebody else, and they're stronger than you, kind of like your ego kicks in and you're like, I can lift that. And in your heart, inside of you, there's the common sense that's telling you, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Back off. Don't do it. But you were like, if they're doing it, I think I can. Like if they're running and somehow a lung is not coming out, like I think I can do this too. When you get around other people that are running after God and they love Jesus and they're committed to him, you get inspired. Some of you can't start running because nobody around you is inspiring you to follow God. Listen, this thing here, this is not enough for the entire week. You know that, right? But I come to church. I know you come. But when you get out there, who are the people that you are doing life with that when you look at them, they inspire you to be holier? They inspire you to follow after God, to chase after. Who are the people that you're seeing and you're saying, I want to run like they run? You have to get constantly inspired because the enemy is consistently trying to discourage you. You have to get, you don't just get inspired one time and then you're done. It has to be consistent. You have to get in the Word and read about Moses and David and Joshua and Abraham and all the stuff that they had to go through and all the failure that they're faced and the family dysfunctions and the problems and the sins that they struggled with. You have to read about them and see the way that they kept on going and the way that God preserved them and say, God, if you did it for them and they were crazy, I thought I was bad, then God, I think you can help me do this. So you have to get inspired. That's the first thing. Number two, you have to get prepared. You have to get prepared. How many of you know that passion and inspiration are good to get started, but they're not good enough to finish? And you know that because you have passionately started a lot of things. I didn't say anything. Gentlemen, you can open up the garage and just hit. And there it is, project after, that's you know, it's something that, you know, I started that in 88. I mean, yeah, no, it's just, don't touch that. I'm going to finish that. I'm working on that. It's like, what? You started that in high school and you retired 10 years ago. I'm going to get to it. I promise. Inspiration can get you started, but it's not going to carry you through. So the author says, therefore, since we have such a great cloud of witnesses, he doesn't say, let's start running. He says, we must get rid of every weight and the sin that clings so closely. He says two things. Number one, get rid of every weight. Meaning there are some things in your life that are not bad. Listen, they're not bad, but they're not good if you want to run after Jesus. They're not bad. They're hard. They're hard to kind of decipher because in and of themselves, they're not bad. Like, are snow boots bad? In and of themselves, like, do you go to the store and look at a pair of snow boots and you're like, evil, in the name, I rebuke you in the name. You don't. I mean, hopefully you don't. But if you put them on to try to run a race, it's bad, right? It just doesn't work. A bathrobe is great when you get out of the bathroom, but it's not good if you're trying to run a race. There are some good things in your life that are good, but the moment that they stop you from running after God, they become bad. Sometimes good things can keep you from God things. So you may be in a relationship and the person is not bad. They're not bad, but they keep you from running after Jesus because they're not running the race with you. So every once in a while, you got to stop running because you got to go talk to them and you got to go explain to them why you're running. because they're not interested in running. They're interested in sitting. They're interested in strolling. You may have an ambition, a dream that you're chasing after, but if you chase after that dream harder than you chase after God, that dream, which is a good thing, just became a bad thing. Because you're chasing after that harder and faster than you're chasing after God. Pastor Shane talked about this last week, and your kids, you want them to be well-rounded, like a basketball, just well-rounded. You want them to be athletic and to be intelligent, to play the cello, the violin, the drums, to speak Cantonese, Hindi, and Arabic by the time they're 9. And that's fine if that's what you want to do with little Johnny, but listen, if they're chasing after that harder than they're chasing after God, a good thing just became a bad thing. What are the things in your life? They're not bad. This is why they're not bad. It's not bad to want to have a nice house and a nice car. It's not bad, and none of that is bad. It's not bad to want to be in a relationship. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that if you're trying to run a race, you can't run a race with things that are weighing you down. Let us get rid of whatever weighs us down, trim the fat. And then he says, and get rid of the sin that clings so closely. Some of us can't seem to get anywhere in our walk, in our run with Jesus, because there's a sin that keeps on coming up in our lives. And a lot of us, what we try to do is we think that we are going to outrun our sin. That's like trying to outrun your nose. It's always in front of you. At some point, you have to deal with the sin that stops you from running the race. And some of us, we just want to start running, and we have a sin that clings like really closely to you, and you're like, I'm just going to ignore it. What? Like there's a bear stuck on the back of your leg, and you're trying to run a marathon. You're like, I'm just going to act like it's not there. Like What is the sin? Here's what it says. The sin that so easily trips you up. And at some point, if you're going to run the race, if you're going to get somewhere, you have to stop and you have to deal with the sin that so easily trips you up. I love the way that Paul writes about it in Galatians chapter 5, verse 7. He says, you were running the race so well. You were running a good race. Who cut in front of you to keep you from obeying the truth? He's like, oh, Mike, I was watching you. I mean, you were like your strides, your arms, like you were, you were drinking your own sweat, but regardless of that, like you were running so, here's what he's saying. Who stuck their foot out and tripped you? You were what is it that trips you up? Every time that you're running the race, what is Is it your anger that trips you up? Every time you try to run the race and be a good husband and be a good wife and be a good, and you're running and all of a sudden something triggers you, somebody looks at you the wrong way, somebody says something and you explode. And everything that you've been trying to do good that week just goes to the tank because your anger just showed up again. What is it that you're doing well, you're doing fine, all of a sudden you go to a buddy's house for a 4th of July party, you have one too many drinks and you're belligerent and you're crazy and you say dumb things and you have to spend the 5th of July calling 25 people that you offended again? I'm just warning you, right? What is it? What is the sin? You have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. At some point you have to lay it out before God and say, God, I can't keep on running this race. Because you either have to get rid of some good things that have become bad things, or you have to get rid of some bad things that have just stopped you completely from running. Therefore, since we have such a great cloud of witnesses get inspired, let us get rid of the weight and the sin that clings so closely, get prepared. And let us run with endurance the race set out for us. Let us run with endurance the race set out. Set out. In other words, focus on your own lane. Pastor Dan says this a lot. He says, help me out here, stay on your number, right? And let us run with endurance the race set out for us. You ever see the Olympics, whenever you see people running and there's like all the lines? Like you can't jump into somebody else's lane. Like you get disqualified. Set out for us. Run your own race. Run your own race. The problem is that I'm fine when I'm running my race. I'm fine when I'm just running, I'm just minding my business. But then you came up next to me. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at your race. And I'm like, huh. What? You know, their course goes through like a river and like a forest and a garden. And mine is just uphill all the time. Their course, like it's running by the beach. Like my course, I'm stuck over here in the desert. This is crazy, this is ugly. My race has potholes. I tripped like 6 times, sprained my ankle. Oh, what? They're giving out water at your race? Are you serious? Water? And you start comparing the race that has been set out for you with the race that has been set out for someone else, and you lose focus. Matthew chapter 10, verse 30 says, and even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Even the very hairs, other than those of you that are bald. None of you know how many hairs you have on your head. Psalm 139, verse 16 says, you saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. Why do I read that to you? Because God knows everything about you. And God laid out the course for you before you were even born. Run that race. Because the moment you start comparing yourself to someone else, you'll either be disappointed or you'll be envious. God, I want to run, but you know who I married. right? Look at your spouse. It's not you, honey, not you. I don't know what that is. I've never said that. I don't know what he's talking about. What does he mean? I don't get. Can you explain it to me in the car when we get out? Because I have no idea what he said. God, I would run. I would run after you. But God, these kids you gave me, they're 38, still living at my house. God, I would chase after you, but they're just clung on. Let me go. God, I would run after you, but God, I came from a dysfunctional family. Did you read Hebrews 11 and some of the craziness that happened with those people? God, I would run after you. I would chase so hard after you. But I have this illness. And God, if I was able, God, they don't deal with the sin and the addiction that I have to deal with, so I can't run as hard as they run. God, I don't have their house, I don't have their job, I don't have their car, I don't have their career. And God says, but I'm not asking you to run his race. I'm asking you to run your race. What have I set out before you? But God, I could run so much faster, but I'm not asking you to run faster than them. I'm not asking you to run longer than them. I'm not even asking you to run in the same direction as them. I'm asking you to run the race that I have set. I counted all the hairs on your head. Run your race, yours. But the enemy will come in to distract you. And he never points out somebody that has it harder than you. That's why you have to get around some people that have greater hardship than you and are running. Proverbs 4:25. Look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. Whew. Look straight ahead. You never see people who are running, looking to the left and to the right and up and down. They're focused on what they're doing. Look straight ahead. I love the way the Message puts it. The Message says, just keep on running. Avoid all sideshow distractions. Avoid all sideshow distractions. Just focus on the race that God has set out before you. Anybody here has a perfect life? Raise your hand, please. Anybody here? No hardship, no trial, you never had any tragedy, nothing bad has ever happened. So why do we spend so much time looking at everybody else and saying, I wish I had their life, 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 their life? Have you ever talked to somebody whose life you wanted and asked them to really tell you how their life has been? Or do you just look at the fleeting moment of what you think their life is and assume that it's better than yours? The race set out before you. Philippians chapter 3, verse 17. This is what the author says. This is the encouragement. Philippians 3:13. It says, no, dear brothers and sisters, I have not achieved it, but I focus on this one thing, forgetting the past and looking forward to what lies ahead. I press on to reach the end of the race and receive the heavenly prize for which God, through Christ Jesus, is calling us. I focus. And he says, forgetting the past. Let me ask you a question. Can you forget the past? It's sort of a trick question. Can you forget the past? No, you can't. Like maybe you can forget what you ate 3 weeks ago. You don't know that. If you do, because you keep a food journal, that's good. Right. But if bad stuff happened to you in the past, you can't forget it, right? But what the author is saying is, don't let it impact your present and your future. You see, some of us are stuck in what happened to us. And it's not that what happened to you wasn't bad and terrible and tragic. But what God tells you is, at some point, you got to bring that to the cross, and you got to take all the power that it has out of it. You have to strip it of everything, and now you can run the race that is set before you, rather than dragging, but I can't because this happened, and I can't because that happened, and I can't run because that happened. And what God tells you is, you have to strip it of its power. It still happened, it just doesn't stop me from running. And some of us are stuck in what happened, and you can't see what's ahead. Keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. You need some inspiration, you need some preparation, you need some focus, you need an example. You need an example. Keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. In other words, focus on the one who's already gone ahead of you. The New Living Translation says, we do this, we run the race, by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. He endured the cross, disregarded its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. Verse 3, think of all the hostility he endured from sinful people. Then you won't become weary and give up. What the author is saying is, hey, as you're running the race, and you're going through hardship, and you're going through challenges and difficulties and trials, and people may not agree with you, they may not like you. As you're running the race and you have to deny yourself things that you want, think about Jesus. Think about Jesus in the wilderness, 40 days and 40 nights being tempted by Satan. Think about Jesus. Think about Jesus being mocked and being ridiculed by people that he could have zapped in a moment. Think about Jesus being tired and lonely. Think about Jesus sitting in the garden talking to the Father saying, is there any way that we can do this differently? Now would be a good time for you to tell me something. And he was the Son of God. And yet he endured hostility and shame, abandonment, separation from God. Think about Jesus. If God allowed it to happen for him, then maybe God will allow some hardship to also show up in your life as well. Pastor, this is so hard. It's so hard. Think about Jesus. The example that he left and laid out for you and for me. He's already run the race. He made it to the end. And now he's cheering you on and he's cheering me on. Book of Hebrews chapter 4, verse 5. Here's what it says. Talking about Jesus and who he is and what he's done. Hebrews 15. He says, this high priest of ours understands our weaknesses, for he faced all the same testings we do, yet he did not sin. He faced all the same. Think about this high priest of ours. He faced all the same testings that you and I did, yet he did not sin. The command is not for you and I not to sin, but rather for you and I to face everything that God puts in front of us. And the last thing. Who, for the joy set out before him. Number 5, motivation. Inspiration is like, rah, 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 rah. Yeah, let's go, let's do it. They did it, we can. Motivation is what is in front of you. What are you running after? What's the goal? Back in the day, I don't know if people do this now, but back in the day, there was a time in which vision boards became a thing. So people would, again, some of you who were born after 1990 just indulge the rest of us, but there were these things called magazines that had pictures in them made with paper. And so what they did in the Paleolithic age was I wasn't alive then, I don't know, but you would look through magazines and you would cut pictures out of like a boat and like a vacation home, you know, Paris or wherever you wanted to go, like a nice car, all these things, and you would pin them up on a vision board. And the idea was that, you know, that every time that you wanted to, like, you know, go and spend money on something ridiculous, you'd go look at your vision board and be like, nope, I'm not buying that big screen TV, because one day I'm gonna live in this $15 million house, even though I only make $82,000 a year. But it's gonna happen, Jesus, because it's my vision board. It's gonna happen, I can see it, right? Who for the joy set out before him. What the author's telling you is, you know why Jesus was able to endure the cross? Because he was seeing what was ahead of him. What's your motivation? What's your motivation for chasing after God? What's your motivation for running the race? What's your motivation? What's your motive? Can we just be honest? What's your motivation for wanting your marriage to succeed? Because you know that the divorce is expensive and she's going to take everything? What's your motivation for managing your money better and staying on a budget so that you can retire at 53 and buy a house on a lake and go fishing for the next 30 years? What's your motivation for overcoming your addiction so you can finally prove to your mom or your brother or your sister or your uncle that you're not a loser? Okay. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 25. All athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal prize. This is what I love. It says, there's one translation that says that for the joy set before him, Jesus endured the cross, disregarding its shame. There's another translation that says that for the joy set out before him, he despised the cross and its shame. If you're going to run the race, you have to have a motivation that has eternal value to keep on going. So your motivation to stay married is not because who's going to keep the house? I love this house. They're going to pull me out with my dead bare hands out of here. That's not your motivation. Your motivation is that everybody else in my family has gone through a bitter, nasty, ugly divorce. And if there's anything I can do, I don't know about them, but if there's anything I can do, I will do everything that I can so that the curse ends with my generation. My motivation for managing my money well and being a good steward is not just because I want to retire at 53 and buy a house on a lake and then invite the pastor to come and visit me. I didn't say which pastor, I just said the pastor. It's because I know that everything that God gives me, he's lent it to me so that I can be a good steward of it. And I want to invest in the kingdom. My motivation for overcoming my addiction is not so I can finally prove to everybody that I'm not a loser. It's so that when I stand before the throne of God, I don't have to say, God, I tried to live for you and I tried to fulfill my destiny, but I got caught up in this addiction and I couldn't do anything about it. It's so that I can stand before the throne of grace and say, God, thank you for giving me the freedom to overcome this. I did the destiny that you called me to do. I fulfilled the destiny that you called me to fulfill. That's why. You have to find the eternal motivation for why you are running the race. Otherwise, you will give up. So let me close with this. As I was studying the text and I was reading, and I said, because the text says that Jesus, he disregarded its shame. That's crazy. That Jesus was like, hey, the cross is coming. And it's not like Jesus was excited. Because remember the garden, right? He was like, can we not do this? So don't think that Jesus was like, to the cross I go. Like, that's not what was going on. It was hard and it was painful. But the text says that he disregarded, he despised. He was like, forget the shame, forget the pain. For the joy set out before him. What was the joy that was set out for Jesus? Because I don't know about you, but when I read the text, prior to coming to earth, like Jesus was seated at the right hand of the Father. He was one with the Father, right? He had authority with them. So it's not like Jesus got an upgrade when he came back. You know the one thing that Jesus was not able to do before the cross? He was not able to sit at the right hand of the Father and intercede and speak on our behalf. But after the cross, listen, the joy set out before him. After the cross, when he sits down at the right hand of the Father, he is all the Jesus that he was before. But now, when you and I sin before a holy God and we deserve eternal punishment, just indulge me for a moment. I just see it this way. And when God says they deserve punishment, and I just see Jesus leaning over and saying, remember the cross. I disregarded and despised the shame so that I could sit at the right hand of the Father. See, when you have an eternal purpose, an eternal reason that is weighty, it's the only way that you can keep on running. When sin and weight trip you up, when you look to the left and to the right and you see somebody else who seems to have a better course than you, when you say, God, why am I doing this? God, why am I running? God, why am I striving? He says, because there's something better. There's an eternal purpose why you're doing this. I'm going to ask you to stand as we wrap up. And I'm going to ask our ministry team to come forward, if you guys could come up at this time. If you're here today, and as I prayed about, God, where do I land? Where do we close? I really felt the Holy Spirit saying there's people that are trying to run the race and they're trying to keep moving and they're trying to go forward, but they've lost the eternal purpose of why they're running. And until they get that back, until they get the reason why they're running, the reason why they're doing this, they're going to have a hard time moving forward. So if that's you, if you're in a place and in a space where you're saying, man, I'm trying to run, but God, I pray. Lord, for some of us, you need to remind us why we're running. God, why am I running? For my family, for my marriage? Why am I running for my kids, for my finances? Why am I running to be free from this addiction, God? Is it just to have a better life here? Or is it because I'm running after the race that you have set out for me, the destiny that you have set out for me? Others of us don't even know why. Some of us need to be reminded. Some of us need to find out for the first time. And so, God, I pray that you would minister to us, that you would speak to us, that you would guide us, that you would show us what is the joy that you have set out before us. May we see Jesus as our example. May we see those who've come before us as our inspiration. May we see eternity as our motivation to run hard after you. God, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. If you would like somebody to pray for you today, we'd ask that you take advantage of that opportunity. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, wasn't that a great message? You know, I say this all the time, but our hope here is that you wouldn't just receive information, but that you would experience transformation. And so we hope that you were transformed and challenged and encouraged by today's message. Like we mentioned, if you want to find out more ways to get connected to Water of Life, make sure you check out our website, wateroflifecc.org. But other than that, we love you guys. We hope you have a great week, and we can't wait to see you next week at Water of Life.